At our Waxhaw landlord's cabin was a woman employed in no other business than cookery, it being a house of great resort. The fire was surrounded with roast meat or barbecues, and the pots continually boiling, full of meat from morning till night. This she cook was the cleanliest I ever saw amongst the heathens of America, washing her hands before she undertook to do any cookery, and repeated this unusual decency very often in a day. She made us as white bread as any English could have done, and was full as neat and expeditious in her affairs. It happened to be one of their great feasts when we were there. The first day that we came amongst them, arrived an ambassador from the king of Sapona to treat with these Indians about some important affairs. He was painted with vermilion over his face, having a very large cutlass struck in his girdle and a fushi in his hand. At night the revels began, where this foreign Indian was admitted, the king and war captain inviting us to see their masquerade. This feast was held in commemoration of the plentiful harvest of corn they had reaped the summer before, with a unified supplication for the like plentiful produce the year ensuing. These revels are carried on in a house made for that purpose. In these state houses is transacted all public and private business relating to the affairs of the government. In this theater, the most aged and wisest meet, determining what to act and what may be most convenient to omit. Old age being held in as great veneration among these heathens as amongst any people you shall meet withal in any part of the world. Whensoever an aged man is speaking, none ever interrupts him. The contrary practice the English and other Europeans too much use, the company yielding a great deal of attention to his tale, with a continued silence and an exact demeanor during the oration. Indeed, the Indians are a people that never interrupt one another in their discourse. Amongst women, it seems impossible to find a scold. Would some of our European daughters of thunder set these Indians for a pattern, there might be more quiet families found amongst them, occasioned by that unruly member, the tongue. Now to return to our state house. The company was summoned by beat of drum, the music being made of a dressed deerskin tied hard on an earthen porridge pot. Presently in came fine men dressed up with feathers, their faces being covered with vizards made of gourds. Round their ankles and knees were hung bells of several sorts, having wooden falchions in their hands, such as stage fencers commonly use. In this dress they danced about an hour, showing many strange gestures and brandishing their wooden weapons as if they were going to fight each other, oftentimes walking very nimbly around the room without making the least noise with their bells, a thing I much admired at. Again, turning their bodies, arms, and legs into such frightful postures that you would have guessed they had been quite raving mad. At last, they cut 2 or 3 high capers and left the room. In their stead came in a parcel of women and girls to the number of 30 odd, everyone taking place according to her degree of stature, the tallest leading the dance, and the least of all being placed last. With these, they made a circular dance like a ring, representing the shape of the fire they danced about. Many of these had great horse bells around their legs and small hawk's bells around their necks. They had musicians, who were 2 old men, one of whom beat a drum, while the other rattled a gourd that had corn in it to make a noise withal. To these instruments they both sang a mournful ditty. The burden of their song was in remembrance of their former greatness and numbers of their nation, the famous exploits of their renowned ancestors, and all actions of moment that had in former days been performed by their forefathers. At these festivals it is that they give a traditional relation of what hath passed amongst them to the younger fry, these verbal deliveries being always published in their most public assemblies, serve instead of our traditional notes by the use of letters. Some Indians that I have met withal have given me a very curious description of the great deluge, the immortality of the soul with a pithy account of the reward to come and wicked deeds in the life having found amongst some of them great observers of moral rules and the law of nature, indeed a worthy foundation to build Christianity upon, were a true method found out and practiced for the performance thereof.